Yo, what is going on, everybody? So today we're watching MAGA voters literally beg for help after Medicaid gets the axe. And the wildest part, they voted for the people doing this to them. We're talking $880 billion getting ripped out of the healthcare system, rural hospitals shutting down, clinics closing, and the people who screamed, "Drain the swamp," are now drowning in it. This is what happens when you vote based on vibes instead of policy. Welcome back to Mind Mirror. Let's get into it.
Red states FA'd, now they're about to FO. 72 million Americans depend on Medicaid, many of which are children and the elderly. Now, to fund his tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, he is now asking his cult members in Congress to cut $880 billion out of Medicaid. You probably won't be surprised to know that the highest number of Medicaid recipients typically come from red states.
See, this is what kills me about the whole situation, right? He's literally reading off a list of red states that are about to get wrecked. Louisiana, West Virginia, Kentucky, these are the states that went the hardest for Trump at the ballot box, and now they're the ones getting their healthcare chopped in half like it's a buy one, get one deal. Nobody asked for. It's like buying a ticket to a show and the performer comes out and just roasts you for 2 hours. Except the roast is taking away your ability to see a doctor. This is what happens when you don't read the fine print on who you're voting for, my guy.
So let's take a look at the red states that are going to be impacted highest by Medicaid cuts. Those who will be impacted the highest include Louisiana, West Virginia, and Kentucky. The next group that will be highly impacted include Mississippi, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Alaska. The Medicaid recipients in these states, if Donald Trump and the Republican Party have their way, could see their benefits cut.
Bro said it twice. He literally ran it back like a replay because the first time wasn't enough. And honestly, I get it because sometimes you gotta hear something twice before it clicks. $880 billion. That's not a trim. That's not a little haircut off the top. That is a scalping of the healthcare system for the most vulnerable people in America. Kids, elderly folks, people who can't just go hop on some corporate health plan. And the wildest part is the MAGA bros in Congress voted yes on this. They looked at their own constituents and said, yeah, we don't need these votes next cycle, apparently. The audacity is honestly impressive if it wasn't so devastating.
In half. FO. Red states FA'd, now they're about to FO. 72 million Americans depend on Medicaid, many of which are children and the elderly. Now, to fund his tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, he is now asking his cult members in Congress to cut $880 billion out of Medicaid. You probably won't be surprised to know that the highest number of Medicaid recipients typically come from red states. So let's take a look at the red states that are going to be impacted highest by Medicaid cuts. Those who will be impacted the highest include Louisiana, West Virginia, and Kentucky. The next group that will be highly impacted include Mississippi, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Alaska. The Medicaid recipients in these states, if Donald Trump and the Republican Party have their way, could see their benefits cut in half. FO.
Rural hospital operators are asking for a lifeline in Austin.
Rising costs, patients moving to the cities, and new federal budget cuts threaten many healthcare facilities in those small towns. NBC5's Phil Prazen reports the impacts are felt already here in North Texas.
2 healthcare locations in Hunt County closed this month. The freestanding emergency rooms in Commerce and Quinlan, operated by Hunt County Memorial Hospital District. Laying off 43 people and closing the locations will save $15 million a year. In the announcement, the hospital board wrote increasing supply and labor costs, the growing number of uninsured patients, and declining payments from insurance companies and government payers have stretched the organization financially. John Hawkins from the Texas Hospital Association tells me in the near future, hospitals in rural areas may soon consolidate services in the large county seats, removing satellite and community offices because the numbers simply don't work. Monday, he had his eye on the Health and Human Services Commission in Austin, which took public comment on the new $50 billion pot of money Republicans and the Trump administration passed.
She's breaking down the real numbers here, and this is what people need to pay attention to. Rural hospitals in Texas are literally closing their doors. 43 people laid off just like that. And the so-called fix is a $50 billion pot of money to offset a $1 trillion cut. That's like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound and calling yourself a surgeon. The math ain't mathing, and everyone in that room in Austin knows it. Here's what I need the MAGA bros to understand. When your local hospital closes, it's not some abstract political debate. It's your grandma not getting to the ER in time. It's your kid not getting checked out when they're sick. This is real-life consequences hitting real people. And the people who promised to make things better just made it infinitely worse.
To try to offset their $1 trillion cut to Medicaid in the coming years.
These dollars that we're talking about today are intended to lessen the impact, but let's be clear, it will be net less dollars for rural hospitals.
By November 5th, the State Commission will apply for the money to try to keep care for pregnant women, children, the elderly, and the uninsured. They will find out if the money will be approved on December 31st.
What I would say to Trump supporters are two things. Focus not on what Trump says, but what he does. And what he's going to do is cut programs that you and your families need. Do you really think it's appropriate to cut Medicaid substantially? Those are families, your families, may not be able to get the health care that they need. The other thing that I would say is that if you are an honest conservative, you believe in the Constitution of the United States, you do not believe that the richest guy in the history, in modern history, can go around unilaterally cutting programs that were authorized by Congress.
Now, this man is spitting absolute facts, and I need everyone to rewind this part. He said, focus not on what Trump says, but what he does. That is the cheat code right there. That is the whole game in one sentence. Because the speeches sound great, the rallies are entertaining, the one-liners get the crowd going, but when the pen hits the paper and the bills get signed, that's where your life changes, and what's changing is your family losing access to healthcare. So a billionaire can save money on taxes. The MAGA bros need to hear this especially. You can love the personality all you want, but when your mom can't afford her medication because Medicaid got gutted, that red hat ain't going to keep her healthy, that rally ticket ain't going to pay for her prescriptions. At some point, you got to choose between the brand loyalty and your own survival.
So if you're a Trump supporter and you're a working class person, understand that they're going after you. And if you believe in the Constitution and democracy, they're also trying to undermine that.
Well, Idaho, Mike Simpson voted yes on the big, beautiful bill. Here's what you can expect. 40,000 Idahoans could lose Medicaid coverage, and another 35,000 could lose ACA marketplace insurance by 2034. This will impact families, moms, children, and rural communities. There are devastating cuts to Medicaid in this bill, slashing nearly $1 trillion nationally. It will cause Idaho's state budget to shrink, and it will impact rural hospitals and clinics in Idaho, and I would not be surprised if more closed. SNAP funding is being slashed by billions, and Idaho specifically could see at least an $18 million increase in state costs in the program that provides $271 million annually, benefits over 130,000 residents in Idaho. You can also expect tax cuts for the wealthy. While the working class will lose services, wealthy individuals will gain tax breaks. Nationally, the top 1% will get about $12,000 per year, while low-income families will lose roughly $1,600 a year in support. This bill also funnels nearly $1 trillion from lower-income households to the wealthiest, reversing progress on equitable taxation and economic fairness. As I said, this will impact our rural hospitals that are already struggling.
She is laying out the Idaho situation, and this is a perfect case study. 40,000 people losing Medicaid coverage, 35,000 losing ACA insurance, 600 nursing homes potentially closing. And here's the part that should make every MAGA bro sit up straight. The top 1% gets about $12,000 a year in tax cuts, while low-income families lose $1,600 in support. That's not trickle-down economics, that's trickle-down-your-leg economics because you're getting pissed on. She mentioned reaching out to your representatives, and that's actually solid advice, because these politicians need to hear from the people they're supposed to serve. But I gotta be honest, if you voted for this and you're surprised it's happening, that's not a political problem, that's a critical thinking problem, and no bill is gonna fix that.
Nationwide, they're concerned about 600 nursing homes closing. You can bet some of them will be here too. What's really interesting to me about this bill, though, is how much pushback there was from both sides. Both Republicans and Democrats, independents, all of them were concerned about this bill. This is going to have a significant impact on Idahoans, so at the end of the day, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. And if you reach out to Simpson, let me know. I have a feeling he got a lot of emails.
Never forget that elections have consequences. For one city in Nebraska, they're learning that shit the hard way. Curtis, Nebraska has a population of 806. It's the kind of place with a single traffic light, one health clinic, and a fuck ton of American flags. And in 2024, over 85% of them voted for Donald Trump. Now, their only medical clinic is shutting down by September 30th of this year. It's the kind of place people went for everything. For checkups, blood work, urgent care, you name it, that's where they went. And once it's gone, we're looking at a 40-mile round trip just to see a doctor. So who have they decided to blame? Not Trump, not the Republican Party. They're blaming the hospital executives. Like this is some sort of isolated business failure and not the direct result of the GOP's big, beautiful bill that gutted Medicaid and rural healthcare funding. That bill slashed nearly $1 trillion from Medicaid. Small-town hospitals like Curtis's, they were the first ones thrown under the bus. And the GOP knew it was coming. And now look where these people are. Sick, stranded, and still making excuses for the guy who signed their death warrant.
Curtis, Nebraska, 800 people. One traffic light, 85% voted Trump. And now their only medical clinic is shutting down by September. 40-mile round trip just to see a doctor. Let that sink in for a second. And he nailed the punchline. They're blaming the hospital. Executives, not the policy, not the bill, not the people they literally voted into power. This is the part where I genuinely feel bad, but also need to keep it real. These are hardworking Americans in a small town who got played. The MAGA machine told them immigrants were the problem, told them wokeness was the enemy. Meanwhile, the actual enemy was the bill their guy pushed through Congress that defunded their hospital. You can't keep voting for the leopard and then act shocked when it eats your face. At some point, accountability has to start at the ballot box.
But this is the cost of voting for the con man, guys. Your taxes don't get you care. Your vote doesn't get you help. It just buys you a slower, more painful collapse. So when you say you support law and order and protecting life, but watch your hospital close down under a president you put back in power, you're not just a voter. You're the getaway driver.
If you voted for Trump in his first term, you were a sucker. But if you didn't learn your lesson and you voted for him again, you're a loser. And the same goes for Republicans. You guys are solely responsible based on your vote for tens of millions of people losing Medicaid coverage, millions of people losing food stamps, and whatever comes out of rural hospitals closing because a majority of their funding was from Medicaid, that's your fault. And it's not just rural hospitals, but it's going to be predominantly poor areas where there's rural hospitals who received Medicaid funding. That is your fault. This is entirely your fault. That I'm not even calling it the big, beautiful bill. It's the MAGA bill.
He called it the MAGA bill, and honestly, that rebrand is more accurate than anything I've heard, because that's exactly what it is. It's not big, it's not beautiful, it's a MAGA bill, and he made the point that a lot of people don't want to hear. If you voted for this the first time, you got fooled. If you voted for it again, that's on you. Tens of millions losing Medicaid, millions losing food stamps, rural hospitals closing left and right. And the MAGA bros who championed all of this are going to be the ones standing in line at the remaining clinic, 3 towns over, waiting 4 hours to see an overworked doctor. Here's my practical advice for anyone watching this. Start paying attention to what's in the actual bills, not the name of the bill, not the press conference about the bill, the actual text. Because your healthcare, your food, your family's safety net depends on those details, not the marketing.
That's what it is. Live with it.
I just heard Republicans want to cut down Medicaid and raise healthcare costs. What does that mean for the hospitals we work in?
Hi, Dana. That's right. Republicans have ripped apart Medicaid, Medicare, and the ACA with their big ugly bill, and they shut down the government just because they refuse to negotiate with the Democrats. That means hospitals across the country, especially the rural areas or the smaller towns, are left without the Medicaid funds, and people are left without their treatment. We need Democrats to stay strong and demand a deal that's going to keep all our hospitals afloat.
The state of emergency is in America, not Chicago, and it's birthed from this president and his administration. Dr. King said he could not raise his voice against the violence of the oppressed without having first spoken clearly to the greater purveyor of violence, his own country. And those are my words to you, Mr. Trump. Before you dare speak about any violence in Chicago, look into your mirror and address the violence coming from the White House. The violence of cutting SNAP, which will cut $2.4 million in food access, put 360,000 Illinoisans at risk by taking food off their table. Address the violence of cutting Medicare and Medicaid by $500 million, reducing access to doctors, and threatening the closure of hospitals and nursing home facilities throughout the state of Illinois. Literally putting Americans in life and death situations. Some Americans will die because of your Medicaid cuts.
An update on what the fuck is happening in Trump's America. They finally did it in the dead of the night. Trump's got passed a bill that guts Medicaid, slashes food assistance, and hands billions to the ultra wealthy. This is not policy, it is cruelty, and it's happening right now in America. The House passed Trump's one big beautiful bill by a single vote, 215 to 214 after an all-night session. This includes nearly $800 billion in Medicaid cuts, $300 billion from food stamps, and imposes strict work requirements that could strip healthcare from millions of Americans. And do you want to know who will be getting hit the hardest with this? The low-income families, disabled people, and children. The Congressional Budget Office estimates 8.6 million people will lose health coverage and 3 million will lose their SNAP benefits. Meanwhile, the richest Americans get massive tax breaks, including new deductions for tips, overtime, and car loan interest. This is Trump's legacy, cruelty as policy.
She broke down the numbers and they are staggering. 8.6 million people losing health coverage, 3 million losing SNAP benefits. And she said something that hit different. If this is what pro-life looks like, I want no part of it. That right there is the contradiction that nobody in the MAGA world wants to address. You can't call yourself pro-life and then sign off on cutting healthcare for children and disabled people. You can't wave that flag and then watch 8 million people lose their coverage and say this is fine. The richest Americans are getting massive tax breaks for tips, overtime, car loans, while the poorest Americans are losing the ability to feed their kids and see a doctor. This is not a political opinion, this is just math, and the math says the people at the top are winning, while the people at the bottom are literally dying.
Suffering as strategy. He personally pressured Republicans to pass the bill, overriding internal dissent, and now millions of Americans are at risk, all to fund tax cuts for the fucking wealthy. If this is what pro-life looks like, I want absolutely no part of it. Like, comment, and share if you are tired of being treated as disposable collateral.
Big beautiful bill, Medicaid cuts. I'm for it because I'm an able-bodied American citizen right now. I'm headed to work. I work at least 40 hours a week. People need to stop just getting free benefits. If you can go to work, you need to go to work because we're tired of paying for everybody. So Medicaid cuts, we're here for it.
It's my mother-in-law. She worked 40 hours a week too at the same company for 32 years, and she was union, and then she got brain tumors and she lost her health insurance because if you're not working, you're going to lose your health insurance, and then Medicaid and Medicare kick in. Every single person is one tragedy away from having to be on Medicaid and Medicare. You're one brain tumor, one car accident, and for you specifically, looking at you, I can tell you're one heart attack away from needing Medicaid and Medicare. Now, I know that you think everybody that's on them is lazy illegals, but guess what? One day you're going to need it and you're not going to have it. And it's not you that's paying everything. It's people like me, the younger generation, that are paying for that.
This right here is the response that every MAGA bro with a truck and a gym membership needs to hear. Dude in the original clip said he's an able-bodied American headed to work, so cut Medicaid. And this guy came back with the perfect reality check. His mother-in-law worked 40 hours a week for 32 years at the same company, union job, did everything right, and then got brain tumors and lost everything. That's the part nobody thinks about when they're chest puffing about being self-sufficient. You are one diagnosis, one car accident, one bad day away from needing the exact programs you want to cut. And he looked at that guy and said, I can tell you're one heart attack away from needing Medicaid. That's not an insult. That's a medical assessment based on probability. Every single person watching this who thinks they'll never need government assistance. Life doesn't care about your political opinions. It will humble you without warning. So maybe instead of celebrating cuts to programs you might need tomorrow, think about what happens when it's your turn.
For you, for her. Now, thank God that she has successful children that can subsidize her way of life, because Medicare and Medicaid, it don't cover it all. You're going to be in poverty forever, and you're going to lose your house, you're going to lose your home, you're going to lose everything that you ever worked for, and you're going to have to move in with your kids. So I hope.
Morning, Bappo crew. It wouldn't be Monday morning if it wasn't just another day where MAGA voters are losing their mind over something they did to themselves. Let's look. The residents of Curtis, Nebraska, which voted for our friend the orange turd, for almost 86% of the voters are now bitching and moaning because their hospital is shutting down because of uncertainty over funding. That's right, boys and girls. If you don't know, the Medicaid bill, it wasn't cutting Medicaid completely, right? When you know a little bit about the business, it was really cutting funding for reproductive services, duh. It was cutting funding for any form of permanent residents or people here legally who already had access to Medicaid. Illegals cannot get access to Medicaid, so stop that shit right now. And more importantly for these folks, it cut funding to rural hospitals. I'm not going to celebrate this, but I am going to say you get what you voted for, and you fucked around and you found out. And this is sad. People are going to be losing their health care and access to health care and having to drive a considerable distance just to get to a hospital. But this is what you voted for.
Man, what a compilation. We just watched real Americans from real towns watching their healthcare disappear in real time. Rural hospitals closing, clinics shutting down, millions losing coverage, and the common thread through all of it. The people getting hurt the most are the ones who voted for this. I'm not here to celebrate anybody's suffering, but I am here to say accountability matters. Your vote is not a jersey you wear to support your team. It's a decision that affects your life. So here's my question for the comments. If your local hospital closed tomorrow because of these cuts, would that change how you vote? Drop your answer below. I genuinely want to know. Like, share, subscribe.